and I have been a member for quite a while. I don't remember exactly how long, but I'm a member of AARP. Let me share with you our disclaimer. Hold on, let me move my face out of the way. I don't need to see my face. I need to see the screen. Okay. So some of you have heard this disclaimer before, and when you join our activities, you'll hear it again, of course, that this session is definitely only intended to be informational, it's educational, and it absolutely does not constitute any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And as you know, you should always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified healthcare provider for any diagnosis or treatment of your specific medical needs and for any questions regarding health or medical conditions. And before beginning or changing any treatment, you also want to be in touch with your medical provider. AARP is not responsible. Okay, let's see.
Is that good?
I think so.
Okay.
There, okay?
Miss Johnson, I'm going to ask you to put yourself back on mute. I was wrong earlier when I said that, there you go, when I said that you had not taken yourself off mute. I forgot that Eleanor had asked us to put our information in the chat. So as I was saying about our disclaimer, any information for this presentation comes from the book by our former CEO, Joanne Jenkins. She wrote a book titled Disrupt Aging. And most of you, I'm sure, know that oops, did not mean to do that. Sorry, okay. Come on, you can do this, Constance. Okay, so Joanne Jenkins is our former CEO, but I believe that most of you know that our current CEO is Dr. Minter Jordan. That is the current CEO of AARP. Our session today will be approximately 30 minutes. I do like to end on time. I may end a little early so that any of you who want to put questions in the chat can do that, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. So, disrupting agents, where are we now? You know, there's still, unfortunately, a lot of negative thinking behind the word aging, or even when you announce to people that you've got your AARP card, you might have grandkids that kind of raise an eyebrow or frown. And I have to admit, even though I think I've become better, I admit my own digital incompetence, as this particular slide points out, but I have friends and associates who are senior to me who are really, really good with all of the digital stuff. So our age doesn't determine our adaptability at all. And that's the whole point of talking about disrupting aging today, to get rid of all of the negative views that are sometimes associated with aging, and definitely to make sure that we eliminate any of our own thoughts about the challenges of aging. And again, that's not to say that we don't have challenges, but it's always in how we respond to those challenges. And I think you would agree to that. So our purpose today is to kind of alter some of those outdated beliefs. And I like this slide pointing out that we should not focus on how long we're planning to live, but rather how well we want to live. And the goal is definitely to see aging as something that we can get excited about without fear. Now, let me just give you a statement that I liked, that I don't remember where I heard this, but it's something that Michelangelo said when he was 87 years old. And all of us know who Michelangelo was. And he said, at the age of 87, I'm not through learning. And I just think that's a powerful thought, and an attitude that I have adopted. I'm not through learning. So even though I haven't mastered everything I need to know about this whole digital environment that we now live in, I'm not through learning. And so I'm excited about figuring it all out. So, how do we become a disruptor? Definitely, we need to update our outdated beliefs about aging. Um, my other attitude is just get rid of all those stupid statements that sometimes people want to say that just aren't true. There's no scientific fact behind a lot of the dumb stuff that we say. Um, and I like this little, I'm not going to read every slide to you, but I do want to point out this little oval here that says, forget the rules. If you like it, wear it. And I do that a lot. I do that a lot. I did ask my daughter-in-law, though, to point out to me anytime I've got on a color of makeup that is just so old, and whether or not I need to update it. But other than that, I'm pretty bold about wearing what I want to wear. So I think all of you know what ageism is, but let's talk about it just a little bit here in terms of defining it and giving you a little history about it. The phrase actually was coined all the way back in 1969, as you can see, by a gentleman named Robert Butler. And he did that to describe the discrimination against us as seniors. And of course, he patterned it after sexism and racism. And there are a whole bunch of isms out there. And I think we would agree that at this stage, anytime you kind of attach ism to the end of anything, it has a negative connotation. But definitely after the Second World War, a lot of problems developed with the whole workforce and just wanting younger people to take on jobs that those of us who were seniors had had before. Now, there's another Disrupt Aging course that AARP has been part of that was geared toward instructing young college students to recognize how much a senior could teach them. And I still subscribe to that. I actually have some friends who are about 30, some of them even 40 years my junior. And what I say to them is that we should all practice a form of what I call reverse mentorship. I like to receive mentoring from the 30 and 40-year-olds, and they really appreciate some of my mentoring and the wisdom that I can pass on. And if you're not engaged with someone, 30 to 40 years your junior, I encourage you to do that because there's so much information that you really can pass back and forth to each other. So, on the frontier of discrimination, research shows that older workers are highly engaged. We certainly are motivated, and we bring a more positive work environment when we're around. Younger people recognize that there are things they can learn from us, as I was just saying, and we certainly can learn a lot from younger people to, reduce or mitigate any conflict. How do we win the battle against ageism? We get excited about whatever age we are, and define your age for you. Because there certainly are people that may have some health issues that appear a lot older than some of us who might be older, but we don't have the same health issues that a younger person might have. So you got to define your age for where you are and how it works for you, and not allow somebody else's definition of what you're supposed to be thinking or doing at your age. I just looked at the slide, and I agree. I had forgotten this, that we need to stop mindless aging. Joanne Jenkins divided this into specific, areas of paying attention. Of course, health is number one, wealth and self. and they really come together. It's like almost any talk you listen to these days talks about, they always manage to talk about the three-leg stool. I don't care what the topic is. I'm sure all of you have heard, ministers and teachers and everybody talks about that three-legged stool. So with regard to this health, wealth, and self, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. We need all three of these to really have a good balance to how we approach aging. Mental fitness, as we all know, prevents a lot of, I'm not wanting to say disease, but it's so crucial. I read a statistic just the other day that startled me. I don't think I knew this. Let me see if I can quickly put my hands on it. This is a scientific fact, and I'm not sharing it with you to scare you, but I was really startled by it. And since we're talking about mental fitness, let me just share this, that every 66 seconds, that's 66, someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia. And while I know that that's a very serious problem right now, I don't think I realized that it was every 66 seconds. So we are in a position, those of us who are healthy and are paying attention, to do everything we can to make sure that we don't become part of those statistics. Be an active partner in your own health care. That's important. And be bold about asking questions and get comfortable talking with your physician. I talk about that because I think most of us are still of an age where if the doctor said it, then we sometimes would accept it as truth. And I would submit to you that while you want to not dismiss a doctor's advice, I think it's important to ask questions to make sure that they understand who you are when they make recommendations. So please, if you have tended to not want to speak up, or if you don't think you can speak up, take somebody with you who's got a big mouth like I do. Ask a good friend or family member to accompany you, so that if there's a question you want to raise, you can raise it. The last part of this slide, I absolutely agree with, that we need to go from a sick care system to a real true wellness system, and approach not just healthcare, but start off thinking about what could help me be closer to optimal health, not just managing a sickness. Now, if any of you are still working out like you did when you worked out in your 20s, my hat's off to you. I tend to walk 5 to 6 days a week. And this morning, I have to admit, I did get a walk in, and then I was dragging for about an hour before I got my act together. So, and you do know that we just live longer when we're focused on a purpose for ourselves, and when we are in community. Another statistic that I read recently is that loneliness can have more detrimental effects on our health than even some of the chronic diseases, that it's just so important that we make an effort to get together with friends and family and do stuff, and not to isolate ourselves. And I think a lot of people figured that out during COVID, which, even though it's now been more than a couple of years, feels like it was just yesterday. Social Security, oh my gosh, being sufficiently financed to provide meaningful benefits for the long term, and more support to all of us. we could spend hours just talking about ways of making sure that as we age, we stay financially literate and healthy. I do like that banking is becoming more age friendly. I was in a bank just yesterday. I needed to actually go in person, and I was talking to a woman in front of me in line, and we both commented on the fact that the interior of most banks have dramatically changed. If you haven't been inside your bank lately, it's worth a trip just to see how they've reorganized, redesigned banks. And so many of them now don't even have counter space. But what impressed me about the one I went in yesterday that I really noticed and appreciated is that they did have a couple of counters away from like the teller window as you come in. But one of them was actually low enough so that if someone were in a wheelchair, the counter was at their waist level. And I thought, well, now that makes so much sense. How come somebody didn't think about that a long time ago? So age-friendly banking, and of course, that's not just an age thing. That is in keeping, being in compliant with the American Disability Act for people that might be in a wheelchair, whatever their age. But it makes so much sense to me, and it's the first time I've seen it in a bank. And I thought that was impressive. Let me do a little commercial here for AARP's fraud talks. We've got quite a lot of information available to combat fraud. And if you look on our website, you'll see presentations like this one, specifically designed to talk about avoiding any fraudulent scams and keeping yourself informed about the latest schemes that might be out there. So definitely get educated about fraud. It's just important. And AARP has been on the cutting edge of informing us about that. Let's see, our life goals. Let me repeat the statement that I opened with about Michelangelo at 87, saying he's still learning. One of the best things we can do is to continue to reinvent ourselves and to update our goals, or revisit our goals. Maybe there are some goals that you wrote even 10 years ago that you still haven't quite accomplished. And I would encourage you to not give up on them. You might need to make some adjustments, rework them, but you ought to still have goals. It makes a huge difference. Huge. Let me share this with you, something that I recently read. Brian Tracy talks about the fact that, no, I'm sorry, this was not Brian Tracy. This was an artist that I saw on one of my favorite Sunday morning shows. And I apologize, I don't remember that artist's name. But what they said was that they still had goals, and they had goals that were taking them past their 100th birthday, of things they wanted to paint and draw and places they wanted to visit to get inspiration for painting and drawing. So they'd already made some goals beyond their 100th birthday to be able to do that. So update your goals. I already talked about reverse mentoring with someone 30 to 40 years younger than you are. And still on that theme, looking for a purpose and a reason for us to kind of redesign our lives, you know? Do you like your life today? How well is it suiting you? There's so many things that we can do to adjust where we are right now so that it's more in line with what we want to accomplish at this current age. And again, let me make a plug for this book that AARP has had out for quite a long time, our Home Fit booklet. And that is available if you look online and search for that. Back to my being bold about how you have conversations with your primary care physician, are there some things that you would like to just make your life easier right now? Ask for them and look for ways that you can get some of those things done. I still get teased about my library card, but I love the library, and I'm there often to check out books that appeal to me. And I'll share with you something that I've been doing lately that I have to admit has brought me way more joy than I thought it would. When's the last time you read a good poem? Was it when you were in high school? And I mention that because I recently got two books from the library, two poetry books. And one of them was by Nikki Giovanni, and she talks about quilting. And she ends a particular poem by saying she recognizes that now she has become her grandmother. She's sitting at a window looking out and recognizes that she has become her grandmother. And I mention that to you now because most of us on this call today are probably grandmother age if we are not actually grandmothers. Um, and I'm finding that even though when I was in junior high and high school, I can't say I was all that excited about poetry, but now I'm thoroughly enjoying just reading poetry, something totally unusual. So if you are a reader and you've only been reading novels or you've only been reading mysteries, um, think about changing. Maybe if you've only been reading romantic comedies, you'll switch to mysteries. And if you've only been reading mysteries, try reading a romantic comedy. But I'm asking you to consider inserting maybe some poetry in there as well. Okay. World Health Organization has sponsored age-friendly communities. And I'm sure many of you have seen some of these communities on television. There's everything from the tiny house, tiny house communities that have become the big rave in the United States right now, to walking communities, to communities that don't have a lot of vehicle traffic. It really is important, and some of these have just exploded into our different areas of the United States. Communities for all ages, 100 plus. This is an old article that AARP did all the way back to 2018. But again, since that time, even more and more livable and walkable and fit communities have popped up across the country. And depending on where you live, you might already be living in one, and it's worth exploring. Now, my question is, are there any beliefs that you're holding on to that you want to get rid of in terms of recognizing that we are at an exciting time? This is one of the best times to be alive in the United States. And I think I just saw in our AARP magazine recently that there were more than 100,000 Americans this past year who lived beyond 100 years old. I think I've got that statistic right. So there's no room for us to be nervous about aging, to use any of those old, worn out, incorrect adjectives, but to see ourselves as huge contributors as we get older, and just to abandon any of those outdated beliefs. So, to summarize, make choices that are best for your needs and what you want to do as we go in and continue down this journey of happily aging, content with our current age, and excited about the future, and claiming how long and how well, more importantly, how well we're going to live. Let me give you this, excuse me, the quote that I was looking for earlier from Brian Tracy. And I started talking about this, but I can quote him exactly. He says, "This is the most wonderful time in human history to be alive in terms of health and longevity. It has never been more possible for us to live longer and live better than absolutely it is right now, today. Our later years can certainly be just as productive, meaningful, and I think even more purposeful than in our younger years." I remember hearing somebody say that if you're still thinking the same at 50 as you were at 30, what have you been doing the last 20 years? And now that I'm past 75, I'm wondering and making sure that I'm not still thinking the same way at 75 plus that I was thinking when I was 50. So I share that with you. Disrupt aging is absolutely for anyone of us who insist on living a life of connection, engagement, expansion, and abundance. I have to put that in there because that's the way I think about the possibility for us at any age. We are glad you joined us today. It's exactly 1:29. I am willing to stick around to answer any questions if someone wants to put those in the chat.
Thank you, Constance. Oh, I'll raise my hand. Let me look in the chat. Lou says, thank you, much appreciated. Car said George Burns booked the theater for his 100th birthday performance.
Ooh, I like that. Good. Thank you for sharing that.
If anybody has a question, you can go ahead and post that in the chat. Otherwise, we thank everybody for their time today. And we thank our wonderful host, Constance Harris, for delivering today's presentation.
Thank you all for participating today. This was a lot of fun. Eleanor, I will let you take back the screen.
Oh, okay. You're getting a lot of praise in the chat. Constance, I'm going to call you offline.
Okay, that'll work.
Outside of this phone call for us to have a separate conversation. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Just to make sure everybody gets off. All right.
Sure.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank